Hello and welcome to a new edition of Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee, brought to you by Landmark College, the college for students who learn, think, and operate differently. Victoria McGovern put it all in perspective when she said, the human brain is as diverse as the human fingerprint. And helping us understand the range and the diversity of the human brain is Dr. Manju Banerjee, Landmark College Learning Disabilities and Neurodiversity Ambassador at Large. And she's here with me now. Welcome, Dr. Banerjee. So wonderful to have you on.
It's wonderful to be here with you, Vijaya. Looking forward to this session.
Yes, absolutely. And we have so much to cover on this, on the topic of neurodiversity and addressing all of the challenges that come with it. And we often hear that students who are neurodiverse have executive function challenges. Now, what is executive function?
Yeah, great question. And it seems like a mystery to many people,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a very important component of what we do. So, executive functions are cognitive processes that regulate our ability to kind of self-direct ourselves to reach a goal. So, let me give you an example. So, let's say you want to lose weight, and that's your goal. So, self-directed action would be things like not storing a lot of sweets in the fridge.
Yes.
Or not going past your favorite pastry during lunchtime, so you're not tempted to buy something there.
Yeah.
So these are small examples, but for a student who, let's say, has a test coming up, your self-directed action towards yourself is, when should I start studying? What should I study? Do I know the directions? All of these are steps that kind of build up to reaching that goal of doing well on the test. So executive function skills are basically purposeful, organized, strategic, self-regulated, and goal-directed behaviors that we take to reach a goal. And you can imagine what would happen if some of these executive function components don't work as they're supposed to.
Yes. Why would be they so important, right? If you don't have
Yeah,
them.
exactly. Because what executive function skills allow us to do is to focus and sustain our attention. It prevents us from acting impulsively and to resist distractions, tolerate frustrations. Later, if we have time, I'll tell you about the cool executive function skills and the hot executive function skills.
Okay.
But to me, what is most important is EF skills allow us to think about the consequences of our different behaviors, to reflect on past experiences, to learn from them, and then plan for the future, have a goal, and then take action to self to reach that goal.
So I would assume that that is like a regular thing that everybody would do, right? So is it specifically for neurodiverse people?
It is so exactly. We all have differing levels of executive function skills. If you recall, at our previous session, I had talked about how executive function skills are higher order tasks, higher order skills. So they develop later. And what research has shown is that our executive function skills are not fully developed even up to mid-20s, when you're 20, 25 years old.
Okay.
So you can see, for example, one of the executive function components is resisting temptation or distraction. So many of our preteens and teenagers, when they don't have fully developed executive function skills, will give in to those temptations.
Yeah.
Add the layer of neurodiversity on top of that, and it becomes even more complex.
Right. So for folks who've just joined us, we're understanding executive function skills and challenges among neurodiverse students. You've tuned into Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee, brought to you by Landmark College. Landmark College is one of the only accredited colleges in the United States designed exclusively for students who learn differently, including students with learning disabilities like dyslexia, attention deficit disorder, and autism, among others. So you can reach reach out to them at landmark.edu/success center to learn more about their success center right here in the Bay Area in San Mateo, or call them at 408-505-4170 to learn all about their programs and what they have to offer. Dr. Banerjee, yeah, tell us more about the executive function. And you also, you mentioned that this is not generally a single concept, right? So what does that mean, and how do these various components affect neurodiverse individuals?
Right, right. Let me just start by citing some of the research, which
Okay.
highlights the importance of executive functions.
Mm-hmm.
Executive function skills and well-developed executive function skills have been associated with better school readiness, transitioning from one area to another, for example, from high school to college,
Mm-hmm.
higher academic performance, and not engaging in risk-taking behavior. These
Yeah.
are all desirable skills for our students. So
Mm-hmm.
when you have properly developed executive function skills, then the research shows there's definitely positive outcomes.
Uh-huh.
That
Mm-hmm.
being said, executive function is not a unitary construct, and it's made up of multiple components. In the psychology literature,
Mm-hmm.
they talk of cognitive flexibility, that is being able to switch gears. For example, you're working on a math problem
Yeah.
and it's not working out. You have to know when to pause on that process that you're using and try a different approach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's cognitive flexibility. Executive
Uh-huh.
function controls that. It is the same with relationships or reading, whatever. Know when to pause. This is not reaching the goal that you have, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore you need to take a different approach.
Uh-huh.
The second component in the literature is working memory. Working memory is our workhorse.
Mm.
Working memory is different from long-term memory. What working memory does, it allows us to hold a certain amount of information in our brain and to be able to act on it. That's very important. So it is our memory capacity. What happens is when you're stressed
Yeah.
or anxious, that memory capacity shrinks. So
Mm-hmm.
your executive function processes get impaired.
Yeah.
The third component is what is called inhibitory control. That is being able to control and overcome distractions and other
Mm-hmm.
what do I want to say?
What is the word for it?
Ignore distractions or
Yeah.
stop an impulse
Yeah.
from
Impulse. Mm-hmm.
from
Yeah.
taking over. So those are the three. But then Thomas Brown,
Yeah.
one of a leading proponents in the field of executive function, talks about 6 different elements that make up the EF model. It's called the Thomas Brown model of
Oh,
EF.
okay.
Yeah, and I'll mention those very briefly.
And before you mention that, let me tell folks who are
Yes.
listening to us, you're listening to the show all about dealing with neurodiversity. And we're talking to Dr. Banerjee of Landmark College. Landmark College really offers a vibrant and personalized educational experience for students with learning disabilities through a variety of majors, online and summer programs, and supporting transition to college. You can also reach them, of course, at landmark.edu/success center, or call them at 408-505-4170. And Landmark College is, of course, based in Vermont, but the Success Center is right here in San Mateo with all of the cutting edge facilities that the parent institution has. So you want to check it out. It's our very own jewel in the crown right here in the Bay Area. And, if you are the parent of a neurodiverse teen or child, this is the place for you to check out. Yes, Dr. Banerjee. So you mentioned 3 of those EF, um, you know,
Conan.
components:
Yes.
working memory, flexibility, and something else.
Cognitive flexibility, working memory, and inhibitory control. That is being
Okay.
able to control your inhibitions.
Inhibitions. Okay. But you said there are
Yeah,
6.
there are Yes, proponents in the literature actually talk about 33 different
Oh
components. I'm
my
not
gosh.
so it is a very complex process. That's
Yeah.
what I just want to highlight.
Yes.
Thomas Brown talks of 6
Yeah.
elements that make
Uh-huh.
up. He talks about activation, that is getting activated to do something.
Yeah.
Focus, as its word implies, getting refers to focusing and sustaining attention.
Mm-hmm.
Effort. That
Yeah.
means, putting in a sense of arousal before
Yeah.
you start a task. Then
Yes.
emotion and emotional regulation. He
Mm-hmm.
talks about memory and also taking action.
Okay.
But
Mhm.
all of these components have different implications if there is a breakdown in
Mm-hmm.
one of these areas. So we can
Yeah.
definitely talk about some of the challenges of neurodiverse students.
Yes, a lot of challenges right there. And so
Yeah,
many students with these challenges, like you mentioned, they have difficulty with self-activation itself, right? So what does
yes.
that mean? What does that imply?
Yeah, exactly. So let me start with examples, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of explain what self-activation is. So do you know a student who takes a long time to settle down and get started on a homework task?
Mm,
Do you know someone who has a long-term project but doesn't get to start that project until the last minute? Do you know someone who has a really hard time writing that first paragraph on a written assignment? I mean, I could go on and on.
yeah,
But the point is they have difficulty with
self.
self-activate.
Hmm. So
Self-act,
getting started is what it is.
yes, getting started, getting organized, prioritizing that task, getting activated, all of that are part of self-activation. I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you a very real example from Landmark College. This particular student
Yeah.
wasn't a student at that time when I knew him. He said, Dr. Banerjee, for me to get started on a task,
Mm.
I have to feel like it's an extreme sport. I have to feel an adrenaline rush. So,
Mm-hmm.
you telling me, okay, now the exam is on Friday, you should start studying on Tuesday or Wednesday won't work. I'll start studying for it the night before on Thursday.
Oh,
That was a real eye opener. And it's
yeah.
important for parents to understand when your EF is not triggering the type of behavior that would trigger for EF for you and me, we have
Mm-hmm.
to understand what's happening. And we have to work with where the student is
Yes.
and where the breakdown in executive function is happening.
So
And
is
that,
that a degree of inertia, or what would you
no, it's not inertia.
attribute that to?
Yes, it's not inertia at all. It is some of the components of your executive function
Mm.
are not activating. Let me give you another very concrete example for
Yeah.
the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we have Mira, who's in 7th grade.
Yeah.
She has a science project, and the teacher has given them 3 weeks to finish this project. There's a deadline, everything else.
Yeah.
Mira writes this project in her planner, goes home and forgets all about it, doesn't think about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks, I got plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
So Mira is procrastinating
Yeah.
about researching this project, getting the materials and notes all organized, etc. Then, 2 weeks into it, the teacher mentions the science project, and Mira has a bit of a momentary panic, but
Mm-hmm.
he says, "Oh, I've still got time." So your EF has not gotten triggered. So it is not inertia. Your EF doesn't rise to the level of taking action towards self.
Oh, okay.
Then what happens? 2 days before, she's now in real panic, goes to her mom and says, I got to get this done. Mom is very upset,
Mm-hmm.
turn in the project late, and, grades are reduced, or she's penalized for turning in a late assignment, etc. And, she feels bad. She feels embarrassed. Her self-worth goes down. This becomes a cycle.
Yeah.
It happens with the science project. It can happen with another assignment, essay that
It
is,
just triggers a kind of a chain reaction with other things as well.
yes, and
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of you're not good at academics.
Mm-hmm.
So executive function is a very critical um, component of our everyday functioning in
Yeah.
our everyday lives, but especially for our teenagers and preteens who
Yes.
are just starting to develop these skills,
Mm-hmm.
these cognitive processes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they're not fully developed, it can lead to
Mm-hmm.
significant.
Absolutely. It's so critical that that this is developed, right, going forward, because otherwise students can just be stuck for life in that mode if you're not
It
really
can
getting.
be. The hopeful thing is you need to find out where the intervention should happen. And
Mm-hmm.
once you find that out,
Yeah.
intervention can be introduced
Mm-hmm.
and students can improve their executive function skills and develop their executive function skills.
Mm-hmm. So there's hope and there's help. And for
Absolutely.
so, folks, you're
Absolutely.
listening to Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee. She's here with us, and this program is brought to you by Landmark College, providing that hope and that help, empowering students, transforming education. Landmark College is a community designed exclusively for students who learn differently, whether it's ADHD, autism, dyslexia, executive function challenges that we're talking about with our subject matter expert, Dr. Manju Banerjee. And so, if you are the parent of a neurodiverse teen, you can reach out to landmark.edu/success center, find out more about that Bay Area Success Center that they have right here in San Mateo. And you can call them at 408-505-4170. So, Dr. Banerjee, very well laid out. I hadn't realized that there's so much research and learning towards EF, as you put it. So another term that's often associated with executive function challenges is self-regulation, right? So could you please discuss for us that emotional self-regulation issues that are faced by neurodiverse students?
Yeah, another great question. Uh, so we understand that executive function, skills, and abilities are multidimensional.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, in the field, we often talk about hot executive function
Mm,
abilities, cool executive function abilities. So
okay.
the hot ones are related, if you want to think like hot-headed,
Mm,
think of them as the emotional regulation, the motivation,
mm-hmm.
the being able to self-regulate, to self-soothe. Like if when we get bad news, again, this is executive function. We learn
Mm,
how to self-soothe. For students who are neurodiverse, they will often fly off the handle and take a longer time to calm themselves down.
mm-hmm.
These are the cool, hot
Yeah.
EF
Yeah.
function. The cool ones are related to cognitive processing.
Okay.
That's in the head of how we process information, whether we are using cognitive flexibility, whether we are using our memory capacity, etc. So these are the cool executive function skills. So both work. But here's the important thing. Executive function abilities are a fixed quantity, if you will.
Okay.
Think of your car's fuel tank.
Mm,
So when you're expending a lot of executive function to, let's say, inhibit yourself from speaking out and blurting out in class, you are exhausted. You and I may not be exhausted. It's
yeah.
not a big deal for us. But
Mm.
for neurodiverse students to have to sit without blurting out
Ah.
appropriate, inappropriate comments in class takes up a lot of executive function.
Uh-huh.
And their fuel tank of EF actually goes down.
Down.
So yes, so they need an opportunity to get out of the class, go outside maybe, or to the corridor, take a walk, and then come back. And
Mm-hmm.
that's very important for parents and teachers to understand that when they're using executive function, particularly the inhibitory control in the classroom,
Yeah.
they need a break. Sometimes
Oh,
they will.
yeah. One wouldn't have realized that that was something that was needed. But so I assume that Landmark College supports all of this, right? The executive function. I mean, they are
Yes,
adept at really dealing with all of this.
yes. I can give
Mm-hmm.
you some examples of how Landmark College does this.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things is, you know, as adults, I love the idea of being able to model and demonstrate desired behavior. So having modeling by teachers, which happens very often in the classroom at Landmark College, really helps students understand, let's say, how to control their emotional feelings, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing when you're working on the cool EF, or the cognitive information processing part of
Yeah.
it, is the teachers at Landmark do is think aloud. I'm writing, I have a problem on the board, but I'm thinking aloud in front of the students how I would go about solving that problem.
Oh,
And
okay.
that really helps the students understand, oh, this is how I need to be thinking. And again, they're observing.
Uh-huh.
Another thing where, we need to be sensitive, especially these are college students, that you don't want to be called out in front of your peers.
Yes.
So using space to cue and regulate. And what do I mean by using space?
Mm-hmm.
Teacher just comes up and stands next to the student instead of calling on the student to do
Oh.
something. So
Mm-hmm.
that is yet another way in which students at Landmark get support and scaffolds for their executive function.
I love that word,
Yes,
scaffolding, right? Holding it
yes,
together.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing with the scaffolding is to know where the breakdown is occurring. Is it with activation? Is it with focus? Is it with emotional control? Is it in taking action? So knowing where that is happening, and advisors at Landmark do a fantastic job of figuring out where there might be an executive function breakdown and then introducing the intervention for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So, folks, academic support, executive function coaching, and student life transition to college skills training for neurodiverse learners, and really picking up on the executive function challenges. That's what Landmark College is all about, and they're right here in San Mateo, in the Bay Area, at their Success Center. Reach out to them at 408 505 4170, or just visit landmark.edu/success center, and you'll learn so much more about this journey into neurodiversity. So while we have a few moments, and if you could also touch upon a little bit upon the hot EF buttons that you had talked about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me focus, since we're talking about Landmark, let me focus on the young adult population,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
as the post-teenage population.
Yeah.
And what does EF look like for these students, or EF challenges look like for these students?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that they have difficulty with is meeting adult expectations. Their expectations do not necessarily match the adult expectations, so you will see a lot of acting out behaviors.
Yeah.
And these are, again, related to emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that we often see is, again, related to emotion, is poor self-worth,
Yeah.
poor self-image.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what happens at Landmark, especially with through their advisors, is opportunities to give constructive feedback, which boosts the student's self-esteem and
Mm-hmm.
self-worth. And finally, uh, what we will see with executive function challenges is heightened stress and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many ways. I'll give you one example, which I loved, was where this teacher would do like a short 10-minute meditation in her class
Okay.
before an exam, so that the students would calm down and be able to focus on the test and not be so stressed out. So,
Mm-hmm.
so the teachers at Landmark recognize some of the self-sabotaging behaviors
Yeah.
that students engage in who have poor executive function skills, and then they scaffold and support them so that the students learn independence and self-confidence and self-worth.
Wow. Scaffold and support. I'm going to take that away with me today. Thank you, Dr. Banerjee, yet again for, expanding our understanding today with regard to understanding these executive function skills and all of these challenges that are faced by neurodiverse students. And really appreciate your doing that for us. So thank you. And folks, Landmark College is on hand to help you every step of the way. If you are a new neurodiverse student or the parent of one, all you have to do is to visit landmark.edu/success center to learn more, or call them at 408-505-4170. And if you have questions on any aspect of neurodiversity for Dr. Banerjee, then send them my way at vijaya@radiozindagi.com. That's Jaya at radiozindagi.com, and join us every Thursday 3:30 p.m. for another enlightening edition of Neurodiversity with Dr. Banerjee, brought to you by Landmark College. I'm RJ Vijaya for now. Keep listening to Radio Zindagi. Jiye ja.